we're going to turn over to our discussion session now. I've been seeing some great questions coming in over Pigeonhole. The first set of 3 that are being voted up to the top actually have a common theme across them. And in each of the cases, they're asking, super duper, looks neat, but then what? So they're asking HP, are you planning on taking back printers and using these printers as a material source? Loop work, you make beautiful products. How do you ensure they don't end up ultimately in the landfill? And to Lego, you say you are encouraging owners to pass on used toys. Are you actually implementing this in any way? So we're seeing 3 questions about how do you carry the loop back. John, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, the answer is yes. And where we have managed print services, which is a B2B solution, we're already doing that. The challenge with the consumer space is that reverse logistics piece, and I think all of us have mentioned reverse logistics somewhere in our presentations. But we actually have a project going on right now where we're capturing printers from municipal recycling streams, as well as we're trying to drive some consumer take-back programs with some very high efficiency and effectiveness. So it's a really exciting project. You'll hear more in the future.
Okay.
Yep, and from our side, the first step in our process is that if you're going to make anything, you need to make it last. So we make a product that has a lifetime guarantee on it, and we repair any product. So we're hoping that those things stay in the marketplace as long as possible from a use standpoint. And then once they get through a use standpoint, depending on the technologies available today, some of those will be able to come back to us for circular models, and others, because of the nature of what they are and where we are from a material standpoint as an industry, they will eventually end up going to landfill. Mm-hmm.
And so any thoughts on the evolution of that, or?
Yeah, I think our industry, as I said, is the second dirtiest on the planet, and there's a lot. There hasn't been any innovation in it in the last probably 30 or 40 years. And so I think we're starting to see material innovation that's starting to come into play that will allow all materials to be recovered and to be closed loop. But at this point, there's been, from natures of toxicity or dying, any of the natures of some of those things have limitations on some of the existing materials that are out there. A lot of those materials we can't even work with when they come to us because of what's in them.
Mm. And what about Lego? So we've had a question here that's about taking it back. Another question further down the list also says, what about thinking of Lego like a service? What about renting Lego out?
Yeah, and 2 questions we get a lot and very frequently. So good to take them here. I think we've done a number of trials about trying to ask people if they want to bring Lego back and setting up collection stations. But the tricky thing for us is that nobody actually brings it back. So they keep it, and they keep it for their kids and their grandkids, etc. So that is one challenge we have, I think, with an emotional attachment to the product, and that sort of goes to the next question as well. What we're really trying to encourage, and we're putting advice on our website in our responsibility report, and we're going to try and do more with our own Lego stores as well, is giving people guidance of where they can take the Lego, whether it's to a local school or kindergarten or charity shop or a family who lives down the road who've just had kids or whatever it happens to be, because we think that's the most efficient way of doing it. We can try and take it back and process it and distribute it, but that's going to use a lot of resources as well, and we may not direct it to the right places. So we do think that people have a really strong idea of where they would like their Lego to go, if indeed they want it to go somewhere, which, as I said, is something that we don't see a lot of. The other thing we notice is a lot of Lego, and there's a commodity price for a kilo or a pound of Lego on eBay. So that often tends to happen as well, that there's a stock market of Lego on eBay. And that, of course, is up to people if that's what they want to do and give it a second life that way. I think on the other question around renting Lego as a service, there are some companies out there that already do it. They're not Lego affiliated, and that's their choice to do that. The one complexity there is that Lego as a service, as a bucket of bricks, is possible. but Lego as a service as a complete model. And bear in mind that some of the bigger models have 2,000-3,000 individual small pieces. And I think that's where the service struggles, because you're expecting a child of 7 or 8 years old to take 3,000 individual pieces and carefully look after them, and then pack those 3,000 individual pieces back into a box and send them off with none of them being lost or missing. So it's a big challenge, and it of course affects the play experience. But there are those services out there, and people use them. I think the one thing we notice is this emotional attachment to the toy. And even before I worked at Lego, I wasn't up for giving my Lego away to anybody, and I still have it, actually in my parents' home. They wish it wasn't there. They want me to take custody of it myself. But it is, I think that's somehow where toys particularly, or things that are very important in your childhood, are perhaps a bit different to an HP printer, and maybe HP have an emotional attachment to their printers, and maybe some people do that. That's cool too, but maybe toys are a slightly different category.
Super. I do find it interesting, this idea of the emotional attachment to goods, and that based on our emotional attachment, we would treat them differently in how we deal with them. Our conference today is also going on in Toronto, and so we want to turn our attention over to Toronto and see if they have a question for us for our panel.
Hello. Yes, we have another question for Lego, and our question is, how can Lego use its influence to change the behaviors of other producers of play products? And what changes are you asking of your suppliers?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I think we're quick becoming the biggest toy company in the world, and that comes with it, with great size comes great responsibility, and we work within our toy industry frameworks. And I will say that the top guys in the toy industry are all really focused on this. Not just us, but our competitors as well. And I think we're all trying our hardest. I think what we can do is invite them in, and that's certainly what we've said with our Sustainable Materials Centre, is to invite our competitors into a pre-competitive or a collaborative space to say, let's get together and work out how we make a block of material. And let's just imagine that block of material is like a die or the shape of an iPhone, for example. But we have an interest in collaboratively, ourselves and Mattel and Hasbro and all of those other guys, we have an interest in making that block of material in the best possible way. And then our idea on what we would like to do is then split apart and say, now we've made this cool block of material, we'll go away and make it into Lego bricks. And that's our secret sauce, that's our special recipe that we might not want to share with too many people about how we make it into cool Lego bricks. But up until that point, we want to be really open and collaborative and share, and we hope other people are along on the journey. How we can, I think the next question was about how we can inspire our suppliers, and this will probably be something you hear a lot about, is this chicken and egg situation. And we have our suppliers of material that run these huge processes, often in a continuous process. So they don't want to stop that process and make something a bit exotic for us and then restart the process. So they need to know that there's a market out there. So they're saying to us, if only you guys wanted to, in the auto industry and in the furniture industry and in the apparel industry and in the toy industry, if only you guys wanted to buy sustainable materials, we would make them. And we're on the other side of the fence saying, hey, if only you guys wanted to make this stuff and invest in R&D, we would buy it. So at some point, we have to negotiate and move beyond that impasse. And that's what we're trying to do with the Sustainable Materials Centre, is say, hey, look, we're open for business. We've put some money behind it. We want others to come along on the ride with us, and let's start that conversation with our suppliers and get them to think in a different way. And as I said before, we're not a huge buyer of oil-based plastic, but we know we're a very visible and a very iconic buyer, and one hopefully that we can connect with kids on a journey as well around sustainable materials. So that's what we bring to the table, and maybe someone else will bring scale and someone else will bring something else, and that's what we're trying to pull together in this centre and in other centres hopefully around the world.
So I think it's interesting what you've brought up a bit, this idea of needing to be able to demonstrate that there's some stability in the market. and this has come up quite a bit in our conversations as we were preparing for this session. We were talking about how do you do that. I'd like to kind of combine that with this question over here that was about does Metro have any plans to introduce textile recycling? So I want to pan that out and say that there is, Metro Vancouver has been very progressive on the zero waste agenda, the fact that they've been running this series now for such a long time. I'm wondering, can each of the panelists tell us their thoughts on how you, what is it that you need from whether it's municipalities or regional governments that would need to shift that would affect those market dynamics? And I know we have some Globe people in the room. I noticed that they're going to be hosting a conversation coming up on capital, and this is part of this discussion that they're trying to provoke as well. Sam, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a good question because coming from the kind of the building construction sector, you know, LEED plays a big part in you know, our accepting of the waste drywall, where you get LEED points and there's different LEED levels for the amount of, or if you recycle the drywall or the waste drywall from a new construction, new build. And really what I'd like to see is the opportunity for developers and or construction companies or to have the opportunity to find some LEED points in cement or in concrete that actually incorporates recycled material. Because if there's a benefit to using for the developer, for the general contractor, from using, say, the cement over here that has 5% recycled content, or the concrete over here that has 15% recycled content, then there's actually an incentive to use that product. And that kind of, you can work on the green building councils, or you can work with, you know, the municipal buildings or the federal buildings or the provincial buildings that mandate that, you know, the cement used in the construction of this facility has to have X percentage of recycled material in the cement, or, you know, in the wood, or in the products that are in the carpet. You can, you know, I'm only a small piece of the construction arena, and you could apply my thinking to my product to kind of building in general.
Thoughts from you guys on adding to the capital pool and or regulation that would, shifts in regulation that would make this more viable for you?
Yeah, one thought I have is about, and it's more of a European problem, but it's getting products across borders where electronics are typically considered a waste or a hazardous waste. So it makes it difficult and expensive to cross borders or consolidate, in effect, repair and refurbishment. So I think that's one area you could look at. I mean, you have to, we've all said the reverse logistics piece is an extremely challenging situation. So we need ways to be able to do that as cost effectively and efficiently as possible.
And that's, I'm glad you brought that up, but it's the same in our industry as well. And there's many countries, you know, 97% of all materials in our industry are manufactured overseas. You cannot typically move those from one country to another, or even put them back into a facility where manufacturing could be possible. So in a lot of cases, we have to do the work that we do wherever we find the materials. But the other policies that I think, you know, I think EPRs are going to be a big piece of this puzzle. And if you look at it from our standpoint, you know, we're a company that started on our own, and we're a growing company, but we have done this on our own. There hasn't been, there's no capital pool to incentivize the behaviors around this, and there's also very few policies to incentivize large corporations to do anything about what their waste streams look like. So on the policy side of it, I think the EPRs, and if there's some sort of carbon taxing, whatever that looks like, that's going to start to bring the private sector into line on, oh, we need to start to look at what's going on here, that's going to really help. And the other piece of it is that I think there's a lot of the corporations that are out there that have set the zero waste goals, and they've started to build out the sustainability teams and look at those things, but there's no capital behind that. All the sustainability folks are the island inside of the corporation, and they don't have a budget, and they have to go and convince somebody in some business unit that whatever their sustainability initiative is going to be something that's going to make the Q4 results better for that particular business unit. And as a result of that, it's very complicated unless it comes directly top down, which there's a lot of great companies that are top down. There's no capital pool there for incentivizing those behaviors.
So,
Can I
yeah?
just add on to that? So, I mean, I see my job within the company is showing that sustainable solutions actually help drive the bottom line. But I mean, that's a big part of my job, and I think we do it pretty well. There was one other thing I was just thinking about, like regulation. Business model innovation, service models, device as a service, which is a direction that we're at HP, going to in a pretty big way. Government procurement drives behavior, right? Our governments, and I can't speak to Canada, but the U.S. government is the largest purchaser in the world. When the U.S. government has environmentally preferred preferences, that changes corporation behavior, right? So we have some eco labels, we have some standards that we look at, and there's some transparency there, and it changes our behavior.
So we were just talking about Q4 results. There's a pretty intriguing question for you here. In-flight luggage tag, $48. Why is green so expensive?
Yes, so glad you asked. Thank you, the 53 people who voted on that. I think there's a little bit of a misnomer there that this is under the green aspect. There's several things that come into play here, but if you look at that particular, you guys found an item and poked at it. If you look at how things are made, that establishes what the price is. And unfortunately, in this particular situation, we are talking about manufacturing in the United States, and we're talking about supporting nonprofits that employ adults with disabilities who, at the end of their career, actually get a pension when they retire. That is a massive people investment
Maybe
that
the
we are
question
making.
is, why are you only paying $2 currently for your luggage tag?
And I think that's probably a little bit more fair, is that I think in general we've become, as a society, a little bit malconditioned on what we're willing to pay for something and what the value proposition of that is. And because we've gotten cheap and easy and disposable for so long, and we're continuing to get that. And I think purchasing habits, if you look at them, that's part of the problem, is that we've become misaccustomed to how things are made. But what I would hope is that all green products shouldn't cost any more than anything else that's in the marketplace, as long as all of the costs are accounted for. Is the carbon accounted for? Is the water? Is the labor? Is the reverse logistics? Are all of those things accounted for in a process? And if those things are accounted for, then there should be a fair price on it.
Here's the question. Are people buying them? Are you selling them?
Yes, we are. Absolutely.
So people are making a decision to support what you're doing by buying them.
That's correct. Yep. And I don't think that's the only purchasing incentive on it. I think, we go out and we do the same market tests for competition and price points that everybody else does. I think that most people, when they go out, I don't care how dark green they are from a philosophical or values perspective, I think people still look at things and go, is that what I want? Is it the right price? Is it the right color? Does it do what I want it to do? That all the normal purchasing habits are still the same. And then they draw a line at the total, and then they look and say, okay, I'm going to buy that. And underneath that total, they go, oh, by the way, it happens to be upcycled from an airline seat, and that's really cool. When they go back out and somebody says, hey, that's a really nice bag, that's when they tell the story. But from a decision-making process, we have to line up with the marketplace.
I think this next question ties us back to Neri's comments earlier. And so I was struck by her comment that we're going to print coffee cups, and that we're going to be able to use that coffee cup once and throw it onto the ground, and then it's going to dissolve. And there are some things that were a little concerning about those statements to me, and I'm sure to others in the room. So the question asks, the idea that technology will save us, Does this just reinforce consumer apathy and disengagement? Does this just entitle people to then go on using single-use coffee cups? How does that translate into your own setting? Oh, I'm looking as if he's there. He's not there anymore. He'll be back up when I call for him. Do you want to start, John, or Tim? Do you have a comment on that from Lego? We'll start with John.
Yeah, sure. I think it's something we've looked at a lot, actually. You know, the coffee cup example made me smile as well, because we've been looking at our pre-pack bags, and those are the bags which contain the bricks to stop them moving around in a box. And we've been looking at different materials from biodegradable to compostable, etc. And that consumer behavior piece is something that's so vitally important that you know, that if you tell something, you know, something is biodegradable and you know, that's not as good as compostable anyway, but there is the temptation that they will dispose of that in a not cool way, and that creates a litter problem, which creates a societal problem, etc., etc. So this is not the silver bullet, and it doesn't excuse us from all of the other things that we need to do and take responsibility for. I think that the question was also around, you know, technology and consumerism, I guess, is where we were going, and you know, I think that we are in a tricky spot here. That, you know, from the Lego perspective, I would definitely, you know, we as a society, I mean, and from a Lego perspective, I would say, you know, making things that last as long as possible and can be repurposed as often as possible, and hopefully Lego is a poster child there. It has got to be the right way, first and foremost, and then making sure that it's possible to recycle at the end of it. You know, a lot of our challenges in the technology, apart from the performance and the color and the shape and the molding to 2 microns and the shininess and the safety and the quality and the scalability, a lot of our challenges are about how do we make it recyclable at the end, because if we use technology to its ultimate aim and have all of these really complex and exciting materials and they're all co-bonded or mixed together, then it just creates a problem for us further down at the end of the chain. So I do think we need to make things simpler and longer lasting. And of course, you can always say, well, you would say that because you're from Lego, but that is something that I believe strongly.
Thanks. And before we go, John, I just want to note, we did get off to a bit of a later start this morning, and so we are going to be finishing up the panel in a couple of minutes, but just in case people are wondering where we are with respect to time. So, John, do you want to go ahead and build on Tim?
Yeah, sure. And I wanted to go back to my other answer too. So first of all, I don't necessarily think biodegradability works in the technology space, because when you think about looping materials, you have technical nutrients and biological nutrients. It's a cradle to cradle theory. Mixing those two doesn't really work because they could end up in the biosphere, right? And separating those technologies and trying to reuse those materials really. So we actually have, you know, longevity in mind when we design our products. We have serviceability in mind. You know, our next fleet of printers that are going out for a corporate environment will have, you know, an extremely high degree of maintainability built into it, because that's what our customers want and that's what our customers need. So doing that is one thing. I just want to go back to my last thing about taking back printers. So doing that kind of stuff takes partners that you can trust and innovation. And we're actually working with 2 Canadian companies. So that's why I wanted to go back to it, because we're actually working with 2 Canadian companies in that space, Sims Recycling Solutions and Laverne Group in Montreal, who have been trusted partners for many, many years to help us do that kind of stuff. So I wanted to make sure I gave them a shout out.
So I'm going to do a rapid-fire round final, and there are a number of people, and I've spoken to some of them, and they've reached out to me ahead of the conference to say that they are young entrepreneurs in this space, and they are eager to build their businesses, get their circular economy products onto the market. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to each of them? I'll give you a moment to think about that. In the meantime, I will remind you that there are some great questions that are sitting here that we didn't have time to address. And I'm going to be cheeky, and I'm going to encourage you to take those questions and to tweet them directly to our panelists. And don't forget to hashtag the conference, of course. And we'll see if we can't still get some answers from them on some of these issues. So I'm going to start with you, Sam, and ask you, what's that message that you would give out to our entrepreneurs in the audience?
Yeah, I think it would just be to really find that partner that is willing to be invested in your business. As I said in my little presentation there, that really was the key to our success. And I think when you can bring that industry partner or that strategic partner into your business and really get them invested in your success, that's more important than capital. That's more important than kind of anything, because they are really able to get you through those rough patches that are absolutely going to come your way.
Tim, one thing for the aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah, Sam stole my answer. Partnering, I think, for us, whether you're big or small or somewhere in the middle, you need to find someone who needs your solution, who's struggling themselves and needs to partner with you. And I think one thing we learned really, really quickly is there's no way we can achieve this huge technical and engagement challenge alone. And we're a company. We're not a huge company, but we're a company of means in many ways. But there's certainly no way we can do it ourselves. And that came to us very quickly, that even we need to partner with companies big and companies small. So I don't think it matters where you are on that spectrum. You're going to get better outcomes if you collaborate and partner with people and find someone who needs what you have.
Okay. Scott?
I'd like to echo that a little bit, and I think it ties back to the question about technology as well. There's a lot of things that we're going to be able to do in the future, and just because we can do them doesn't necessarily mean that we should. There might be some unintended consequences all the way around of repeating some of the mistakes that we've already made in history. And so really make sure you have a marketplace for it that wants it, whether that be a partnership or a market for whatever it is you're creating. But then also make sure that if you're solving a problem, you're really solving the problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. John?
Yeah, I think my advice would be, look to your customer, solve their problems, do it economically, and depending on is it a consumer, again, solve their problems, make them happy. If it's a business customer, help them be a hero to their customers.
Well, ending on the hero note, I'd love a big round of applause for our circular economy heroes. Thanks a lot. Okay, someone is going to tell you what's happening next. I think it might be lunch.